Hi guys, I'm Matt with Mr. Matt Woodworks, and today I'm going to be talking about some upgrades I'm going to make to this dust collection system. So what I have, which is what a lot of people have, is just the Harbor Freight dust collection system. It's good for collecting bigger chips, but all of that fine dust, that stuff that's really nasty for your lungs and gets all over everything, it's not great for that. You've got this felt bag or whatever, and whenever I turn it on, and whenever it goes on, basically any dust that's inside or around the seams or on it just goes like a big cloud out of that bag. And I've been using it for years, but around my shop, everything is still covered in dust. It doesn't matter how good the dust collection is on the individual tools. Once it hits this thing, that fine dust is going elsewhere. So what's the goal here? Basically, I want to make some modifications or upgrades to this entry-level system to make it work a little more efficiently, to stop the extra dust from blowing out the sides, but without having to spend money on an entire new system. So I did a little bit of search online and I came across a video by Stumpy Nubs where he highlighted some upgrades that could be made to this very system. The main thing being a canister filter on top instead of this good-for-nothing mesh bag, felt bag, whatever this is, cloth bag. So what's the big deal with dust in a wood shop? Well, it's gonna happen. You're using tools and it's kicking up stuff, but anything that you can do to mitigate the amount of dust that's blowing around in the air is going to serve you in the long run. I figure that, having this in the shop is a good first step, but what's the next thing that I can do to make sure that the fine particles aren't blowing back out into the air? Dust is really not good for your lungs. There are plenty of videos out there that will go into more scientific explanations of why it's bad, but the long and short is you don't want little particles in your lungs. And with this stuff blowing around in the air, it is inevitable, unless you are constantly wearing a respirator, that it's going to get in there. So how are we going to do that? What's the next step? Like I mentioned, we're going to do a canister filter. So I put in an order at Wynn Environmental, which is the same company that I believe sponsored Stumpy Nubs video. And this is what we got. Ooh. Ooh. I believe that's going to go like that. I'm sure there's instructions. We'll take a look at those in a second. So basically the canister, hollow all the way through. On the bottom we have a nice fat gasket that is going to rest right down into the top of that. There is a lid that gets clamped on here, and that's really all there is to it. I'm going to go ahead and pull this thing out so we can get a better look at how to fix it up and get this thing installed. Now my system, I also use a 2-stage trash can thingy. Also not the greatest, but it does a great job for pulling all the big chips out, so I don't have to empty out the bag as often. So the first modification I made to this thing was cutting open the bottom of the bag and having that feed down into a 5-gallon bucket that has a trash bag already in it. It's easier to show than it is to explain. So the bucket has a little gasket that goes down and it goes over this bag that has a hole in the bottom, as well as a trash bag that's inside. So when this thing fills all the way up, can fill all the way up to here, all I have to do is remove the clamps that are holding this gasket down, pull this bag out and over, and pull it out, instead of having to take this bag off of the system every single time. Again, you should check out that Stumpy Nubs video. He explains this stuff a whole lot better. All right, so first things first, ouch, we don't want this thing anymore. See that? All of that is being blown somewhere as soon as this thing is turned on. And it's a mess. I'll usually give this thing a good shake and blow it out with the air compressor every time that I change this out. And it just collects so much dust and crud inside this thing. In fact, I'm just going to throw this right outside. Man, gonna need a respirator just to do this video. You can probably see the cloud forming in here as we try to get this done. All right, there we go. Let's see what we got with this thing now. Extra bags, that's cool. Instructions and the hardware. All right, so looking at the instructions on this, it came with this little rubber gasket that's actually going to go on top of here, right around here. There's a little bit of a sharp edge. And these little clips are going to hold it and clip into here, but we don't want these clipping down on top of the rubber. So it says to cut this into about 4 equal lengths. Fold it in half, give it a cut. Fold these in half, give them a cut. Now I can fit these on around here. Easy enough. All right, now it's just a matter of locking these things down. There we go. Not too bad. All right, so the canister is going to fit right on this surface here within the rim of this little barrel. If your dust collection system isn't the same size, it's not the Harbor Freight one, or you find a canister from another company that is bigger or exactly the same size, there are other modifications you can make. The main one being just cutting a circle out of a piece of plywood with another circle in the middle of that so dust can fall through and the canister can clamp tightly to the surface of that wood. But again, with this one, I knew based on the measurements and with talking with customer service at the company that this canister works great with this specific dust collection system. So yeah, the gasket is going to seal it tightly right against here. So in looking at this, I want to make sure that wherever I drill my holes, they are equally spaced apart and that I'm not going to have to deal with, well, I'm not going to have to deal with this thing anyway because we're putting a canister. Well, that's some good news. What does it matter? As long as they're 4 evenly spaced holes, good to go. So what about these little holes? Microscopic dust could just get blown right out through these, right? They have these little adhesive foam pad strip things that go right over the hole. We're going to screw through that, giving it an airtight seal. So screw through the bracket, through the hole. On the back side, they have a little clip to hold the screw in place. Trying to make sure that it is centered. Yeah. Not bad. In the instructions it says that you can kind of bend these little angled clips. So that's what I'm doing just to get a better fit. I'm not tightening it all the way down yet. I want to make sure that they're all clipped on before I tighten them down all the way around. There we go. That's it. All right, guys, so that about does it on putting this thing back together. I am a dusty mess, but not for much longer. I'm excited to see how this thing works. The suction on this is I can already tell that there's an improvement. It's because there's a lot more air blowing through this thing. Again, shout out to Stumpy Nubs for leading me down this path to Wynn Environmental, and a huge shout out to them. They were extremely helpful in getting me set up with the right unit for this dust collection system. I said that I have the Harbor Freight system and I'm looking for the right canister. They said, this is the exact thing that you need. They were very, very helpful. So, check them out. Again, this was just a small investment into my shop, but a huge investment into my health and my lungs while I'm out in this shop. If I'm working on something where there's still dust, I will of course still have a respirator on. I will do my best to protect, but as far as what this machine is doing here, it's no longer going to be spitting those tiny dust particles back out into the air that's circulating through the shop. So I am really excited about this thing. So again, this was a small investment into my shop, huge investment into my lungs and my health. In the long term, doctors and healthcare costs can be through the roof. So doing anything that you can to mitigate that in the meantime is definitely well worth it. And this again was just an experiment to see what is that middle step between the entry-level dust collection system and then going into something a whole lot bigger. I don't have very much room in the shop to expand this into a 2 canister system or some kind of huge industrial system. So I had to see what I could do to better what I already had. And again, this was a lot cheaper than a brand new system. Definitely worth the money. And yeah, I'll keep you guys posted on how it's working and when we eventually get to cleaning that filter out. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.